Climate change is definitely happening. Between now and the year 2100, scientists predict that temperatures could increase by as much as 4 degrees Celsius. But what does that actually mean for us? And why should we care that all of this is happening? The simple answer is that climate change affects everyone. Every country and every person will be impacted in some way because it's a global problem. Let's take a look at some of the impacts that we're likely to see across the globe. These are known as global impacts. Inventive, right? Impacts of climate change. One of the impacts of climate change is melting ice, on land and on sea. Let's start by talking about glaciers, which are huge masses of ice that move slowly over land. As the world's temperatures rise, glaciers are melting and getting smaller. Just take a look at how much this glacier has melted over the years. But who cares about a hunk of melting ice? Well, we all should. Water from melting glaciers makes its way down to the sea and causes sea levels to rise. Since the year 1900, average sea levels have risen by 20 centimetres. By the year 2100, it is predicted that sea levels might even rise by another 82 centimetres, affecting around 80 million people across the world. This means that low-lying or flat areas such as the Maldives could be lost to coastal flooding as the sea starts to take over the land. Some evidence even suggests that the Maldives might be completely submerged underwater by the year 2070. Just as with glaciers, a rise in global temperatures is also causing sea ice to melt in places such as the Arctic and Antarctica. However, this melting sea ice doesn't cause sea levels to rise. In fact, sea ice melting doesn't make any difference to sea levels whatsoever. This is because the space that ice sheets take up as ice, or the volume, is actually the same as when they melt and become water. So when sea ice melts, sea levels actually stay the same. However, melting sea ice is still bad in other ways. Many animals, such as polar bears, rely on sea ice to live and hunt. Since the year 1975, the Arctic sea ice has thinned by about 65%. If there is less sea ice, polar bears won't be able to hunt for the food that they need to survive. This is one of the main reasons that polar bear numbers have been reducing over the years. Extreme weather events are also increasing. If you watched our last film, you might remember that weather is the day-to-day conditions of the Earth's atmosphere. Well, guess what? Climate change can have an impact on our weather by making it more extreme. We call this extreme weather. Extreme weather means that our usual weather events such as rain, sun, wind and snow are becoming worse. There have been many extreme weather events throughout our history. However, scientists have noticed that these are happening much more often or frequently than they used to due to climate change. For example, in 2010, Russia suffered intense heat waves and Pakistan was affected by devastating floods. In 2013, the Philippines experienced one of its strongest tropical storms ever recorded, called Typhoon Haiyan. In 2014, there were droughts in Western USA and there was severe flooding in Somerset, UK. During the summer of 2019, the UK recorded its highest ever temperature of 38.7 degrees Celsius in Cambridge, and some of the worst bushfires ever swept through Australia. Finally, record-breaking amounts of rain caused deadly flooding in Germany and Belgium in the summer of 2021. As well as extreme weather being pretty inconvenient, it can also cause a huge amount of damage. For example, Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines caused 7,000 deaths and left 1.9 million people homeless. It also destroyed 71,000 hectares of farmland and caused an estimated £3.8 billion worth of damage. Just to give you an idea of how much a billion is, that's the same as 1,000 millions. I would probably need another hour of your time to go through all of the impacts of climate change in detail, so I'm going to whiz through a few more just to give you an idea of the scale of the problem. Before I start, can you think of any more? Climate change can cause crops to die during droughts. Plant and animal species could become extinct due to changing climate and weather patterns, making it difficult for them to survive. Finally, tropical diseases such as malaria could spread due to rising temperatures, impacting up to 280 million people. Climate change in the UK. So, we know what's happening around the world, but what does that mean for us here in the UK? If climate change continues, we will expect to see rising sea levels, where low-lying coastal areas like the east of England are at risk from increased flooding, extreme weather, where more droughts and floods are likely across the UK, increased demand for water during hot summer months and a greater need for hosepipe bans. Scottish ski resorts could also close due to ice melt, and Arctic plant and animal species in Scotland could become extinct. I think we can all agree that climate change has some pretty bad impacts across the world. However, there are some countries that are hit harder by the effects of climate change than others. In the next film, we'll be talking about how climate change is making it difficult for some of the world's poorest communities to access one of the most basic things needed for survival: water.